Hi, it's lovely to be with you, and thank you, Dave, for that wonderful opening prayer. And how wonderful that the theme is creativity, because working with shamanism, creativity is a wonderful combination. And I'm going to talk for a little while and speak to you about Druidry and the work of bards, ovates, and druids, and then we'll dive into an experience and come out of that and see if there are any questions or discussions that we want to have after that. So we'll take about an hour for that. So the Druid tradition, this mysterious spiritual path that I was lucky enough to find when I was when I was a teenager, actually, when I was a young man. My dad knew the old chief Druid in England, and so I trained with him. Uh, Druidry is the spiritual tradition, pre-Christian, indigenous, one of the indigenous traditions, wisdom traditions of the islands of Ireland, British Isles, and parts of what is now France, Brittany particularly. And it's experienced a revival about 300 years ago, which has continued to this day. And that revival has kind of picked up a wave of interest in ever since the sort of late 60s, really 70s in the previous century, right up until today. And it represents a nature spirituality. It's a spirituality that has its roots in a particular part of the earth, as every spiritual tradition does. Every spiritual tradition, if you think about it, is born, comes to land, or grows up out of the earth, if you like, in a particular place. But then it spreads around the world, just as I suppose plant species do the same thing, and so on. And so now there are druids in the order of bards, ovates, and druids, which I led for 32 years before handing over to the wonderful Emma Burke from Ireland. We in this order we have about 32,000 members now all over the world, in the United States and Australia and all over Europe and all over the place. And we Druidry is a spiritual practice that rather incredibly doesn't have a belief system. And you would think that to have a spiritual practice, you need a belief system. But if you're into shamanism, you would probably appreciate the way in which you could perhaps argue the same thing in shamanism. There's a belief, perhaps you could say, in the other world, but it's essentially an experiential practice. It's a spiritual way that you evolve your own particular beliefs about how life works and in accordance with your own experience. And we're going to focus really on how Druidry is a shamanic way. It's not often presented as such because people work with Druidry in all sorts of different ways. Some people approach it as a philosophy, some as a religion, some as a spirituality. And there are three schools or streams, if you like, within Druidry: the bards, the ovates, and the druids. And there's a way in which you can see each of those streams speaking to a particular need that we have within us. The bardic stream speaks to that need we have to sing the song of our soul. You know, the way deep inside we have this longing to be creative, to express ourselves, which is why it's so nice to hear that the conference is dedicated to creativity in this way. We somehow know in our bones that creativity is we're supposed to be creative. We are creative beings. We are not only beings, but we're also doings. We do stuff. We do things in the world. We make poetry. We make art. We make love. We make things. We're making creatures. And very often we struggle with that feeling that we can't quite express ourselves as fully as we'd like. And that's part of the purpose of a spiritual way, is to help us express ourselves fully. And so the bardic stream of Druidry is all about encouraging the creative self, for the Awen to flow. The Awen being a Welsh word meaning flowing spirit, or in Irish it's imbas or imas, this flowing spirit, the sense that we have when we're creative, that our creativity is actually coming from somewhere else. You may recognize that feeling. I mean, psychologists talk about it as a flow state sometimes. It's that peculiar feeling where when you're creative, it can seem almost effortless. There's lots of effort involved in being creative. You have to learn skills, you have to make an effort, you have to discipline yourself, you have to go through dry patches and blocks and so on, and actually do the work. But then if you're lucky, a kind of switch is thrown and creativity starts to flow. And you can sometimes almost get a sense of detachment from it. And as I do this sometimes when I'm writing, I'm thinking, oh gosh, I didn't know that. Wow, that's interesting. It's like you're channeling something. Painters talk about it too. When they're painting, there's this sense of flow going down their arms as they paint. And so the goal of the Bardic teachings is to help you become the singer of your soul in the widest sense of that term. But you have this other school too, the Ovate school, which is closer to the classical view you might have of shamanism. The Ovate is the healer, the person who works with herbs, with plants, with divination, with oracles, to peer beneath the surface flow of events to see the dynamics that are really driving the events that occur within space-time. The Ovate is the one who learns to journey into the other world, to find the healings, to find the inspiration, to find the treasures in the darkness. But there's a third stream, and that's the Druid stream. The Druid stream of wisdom teaching is the stream that inspires us with tradition and opens us to the sage within, that part of us that wishes to grow wise. There's an interesting comparison you can make to the quest for enlightenment and the quest for wisdom. There are stories in the Celtic tradition of the quest for enlightenment, illumination, stories of Taliesin in Wales and Finn McCool in Ireland. So that concept does exist within Druidry, but we tend to frame it as the search for wisdom. And here's the reason why. When you focus your energy on seeking enlightenment, you automatically place it in the future and as a moment, a flash of illumination, a flash of enlightenment. And you may well have experienced those flashes, those times when you get a sudden influx of the spiritual clarity or inspiration or illumination. But it doesn't last. You might have begun the spiritual quest thinking one day I will be kind of permanently illumined. But it doesn't seem to work that way. It seems these insights seem to come in flashes. But there's another process that is just as important, which is the slow development of wisdom, the maturing of the soul, if you like. So if you say to yourself, well, I'm seeking wisdom, it's immediately not a moment, a flash in the future. It's something that's happening right now. I'm seeking wisdom now. And as I grow and as I learn and as I age and as I experience things, life, I'm hopefully growing in wisdom. So it has a more immediate and gentler kind of feel to it to balance the feeling of gaining enlightenment. So that's the stream of Druid teaching. That's the stream. So the sage, and that's the need within us, the need for wisdom, the inner sage, the Druid stream of teaching, the inner shaman in the Ovate stream of teaching, and then the inner singer or bard in the bardic stream of teaching, the inner creative person. So although the sort of conventional way of, or classical way of looking at shamanism you would look at the ovate grade. I'd like us to look at all three really, because they all three have this relevance. And a way we can do that is to remember the model of the three worlds that is the primary, I guess, orientation model in shamanism. The middle world, the upper world, and the lower world. So to sort of recap on that, there's this middle world that we all live in today, this middle world of the creation that we see outside of ourselves, and which also exists in consciousness too. When we close our eyes or we go within, in the ordinary state of consciousness, you could say that we're in the middle world, the everyday world, the middle world. And then we have the lower world, which is the underworld, the world that from sort of dualistic and perhaps Judeo-Christian points of view we've been frightened of because it's been perceived as hellish. But from a shamanic perspective, we see it as a place of tremendous richness. It's where all the kind of ancestral energies of the past reside and of our unconscious, with all sorts of teachings and energies available to us if we dare to explore it and explore it safely. And that's where the importance of training comes in, knowing what we're doing, applying appropriate protections and so on. The lower world. But also there's the upper world of the gods, of the goddesses, of higher consciousness, of super consciousness, and in these heavenly realms, if you like, there is another whole bunch of potential to be tapped, and another whole range of transcendental, extraordinary experiences to be had if we learn to travel there safely. If we don't go there safely, we can become quite unbalanced, because we always have to return to the middle world whilst we're incarnated in our bodies in order to function. And so eruption of content from either the lower world or the upper world that isn't controlled, if you like, or isn't integrated, can provoke imbalance. And then you get kinds of psychological disturbances, which are in essence spiritual or psychospiritual disturbances. This is why I like the teachings of psychosynthesis so much and trained in it, because in psychosynthesis, developed by a psychiatrist called Roberto Assagioli, who was initially a Freudian and then a Jungian, and then he developed his own psychology based on a spiritual understanding. He really got this understanding of the three worlds, and he incorporated it in his understanding. And that's a wonderful way for us to understand the shamanic worldview whilst including a psychological perspective. Very helpful, I think, especially helpful if we're counselors or therapists. And so let's take the middle world to begin with. It's the one that, when we get interested in shamanism, it's the one we sort of kind of want to get away from, and we want to dive into doing journeys and traveling to other worlds. That I think psychosynthesis, Solomon is asking. Psychosynthesis. I'm doing a training course on it in February, starting in February. If you have a look on my website, you'll see details, or in my YouTube channel. Psycho and then synthesis, bringing together, as opposed to psychoanalysis. So yes, so we're talking about yes, the middle world. So we live in the everyday world, and the everyday world can be challenging and difficult and boring and worrying and so on. And so it's natural to want to go into that's right, yeah, psychosynthesis. That's right, all in one word, no need for a hyphen. So it can be challenging, and so we often want to go to other places. Of course, people take drugs and drink and all the rest of it, and they sort of drop down into the lower world and get woozy, and or possibly go up into the upper world too, and all the rest of it. But we want to do it in a controlled way, so we start to learn shamanism. But in Druidry, we have a slightly different perspective, which is we say, hey, first of all, let's really ground ourselves in the middle world. And a lot of the bardic training involves expanding our awareness of the middle world. And that means not only the kind of basic concepts that you now find talked about a lot in mindfulness and, you know, Eckhart Tolle's power of now and all the rest of it. It's like, don't try and get away, don't try to go anywhere, don't try to think forwards or backwards, be here now and open up to that, because life is pretty magical per se. So there's all that. And then there's also a widening of that awareness, which is an internal awareness, to the natural world around us, because Druidry is a nature spirituality. And in this nature spirituality, what you're doing is you're observing the passing of the seasons, the movements of the sun and the moon. And so we observe the solstices and the equinoxes and the quarter days in between, so making a total of 8 festivals. So every 6 weeks or so in Druidry, you celebrate a particular ceremony, festival for these times. And you deepen your awareness and experience of the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, of the wind and the rain, of the plants and the animals. And there's a whole bunch of lore about plants that we'll get onto, working with plant oracles and animal oracles and so on, so that we really appreciate the world of flora and fauna, and of the stones, and of the ancient stones, sacred sites, and so on. So that's the middle world. And we spend, so the first level of training in Druidry is spent in a shamanic way, I would say, because shamanism, you know, when Michael Harner stripped it back to its kind of core meaning, he gave the definition of the ability to travel and into other worlds to gain information. I can't remember the exact definition, but basically traveling in consciousness. I think that's it. Traveling in consciousness to gain insights, healing, teaching, inspiration, to bring it back. Well, that's what we're doing in the middle world in the Bardic grade. We're really traveling in our experience deeper into the forest, deeper into the natural world, to enrich our lives and in turn the lives of other people. That's one level of shamanic work. Then we have then once we're stabilized in that world, stabilized in the circle of stones and in the cycle of the seasons, we can then allow ourselves to drop down into the underworld, going through that fairy door at the base of the oak tree, down the stairs, down, and into the underworld forest, there to meet Kanonos, the lord of the animals, or to meet the goddess, to meet the goddesses of the springs and the wells, the sources of our water and our lives. And so in that ovate work, we go deeper. And we actually, that is the time when we start to work with oracles, where we recognize that the surface flow of events is just our perception in the middle world of how time is working. But when we go down into the underworld, time is working in a different way. It's much more elastic and fluid, and there are these different currents. And we use oracles to move our consciousness down into these currents and gain insight from that. And then after developing a real familiarity with that, and the familiarity in the way that we are becoming more aware of our roots, our rootedness in the world, not only researching our own ancestral tree, but that only covers this lifetime and this body. But many Druids accept the ideas of reincarnation, the ideas that we might have had other bodies at different times and different places. And so our root system is much more complex. And in Druidry, we include an appreciation of the milk line as well as the bloodline. And by that, I mean all those influences and people who have helped to make us who we are, who aren't necessarily blood relatives, but are milk relatives in the sense that they nourished us in that way. So we come to know our roots in as rich and varied and complex. And then once we've integrated all this into, and all the time there's this integration process going on, integrating this inspiration, this nourishment, these various journeys that we've been making uh, into our uh, middle consciousness, the middle world consciousness. We can then start to climb up the tree, up into the upper world, to have these experiences of the superconscious, as Sagioli, the psychosynthesis chap, put it. And there we're touching into these extraordinary influences, subtly or sometimes strongly different in nature to the underworld influences. There's a way in which the influence of the upper world is like the voices of the future calling to us, the song of the future. And when we travel into the upper world, we hear the song of the future. And we integrate those experiences within ourselves. So all the time we're working at all three levels. We do it sequentially in the Druid training. We work sequentially in as much as we start with the bardic training, develop that stability there. We go on to develop our familiarity with the underworld in the Ovate training, and then we develop a familiarity with the upper world, but all the time integrating it into our everyday consciousness, so that we're not feeling split, we're not feeling like we really want to be somewhere else when we're actually here in this life, here and now, interacting with the people we love and the world in general. So that gives you an orientation of how Druidry can be perceived as shamanic, and how the shamanic work of Druidry takes place. And what I thought would be nice for us to do is just to experience a little bit of a journey, in order to for you to get a taste of how we work. So what we'll do is we'll drop into this this experience now, and just for 15 minutes or so, and then we'll have a chance to discuss and chat. And so in this experience, feel free to just listen to it like you're listening to a story, with your eyes open, and with a view to perhaps doing the exercise later when you're feeling different and you want to close your eyes and really go with it, or lie down even and do it. Or join with me right away. It's entirely up to you. But so the invitation is to lower your gaze, and if it feels okay for you, to close your eyes, because as you close your eyes, you're shutting off input from millions of bits of information. Stop coming into your brain. So suddenly you're in this different world already. And you can open to that just in that moment of closing your eyes. You can sort of open to the magic of it. And I'd like to invite you into the sacred grove of the Druids. In Druidry, we work in sacred groves, in clearings in the forest. Ideally, we work in physical clearings in the forest, in sacred groves. And sacred groves, by the way, don't have to be artificial. You don't have to cut trees down to make sacred groves, because when a forest grows, it naturally creates clearings to bring light and air into the ecosystem. So you're in this clearing in the forest. You can imagine, if you like, the walls and ceiling and floor around you just begin to fade as you become aware of being seated in a clearing in the forest. There's a small fire burning in the center of the clearing, just a tiny little fire, a little wisp of smoke, and you can smell the wood smoke. And just find yourself a comfortable spot. And just in this first invitation, if you like, is this primary shamanic idea of the sit spot, of finding a spot that feels good. And you know what it's like if you go into a physical space, you can just, in a sensitive way, just gently move around the circle, move around the space. And you'd be drawn to sit in one place rather than another. It's mysterious. We don't know why. The energy is slightly different. It feels better. Might be to do with the visual perspective that you have from this point. Could be due to the magnetic currents in the earth, and you're aligning your body with the magnetic currents. Who knows? But whatever it is, you're finding the right spot. And there's a perfect log for you to sit on, or some nice dry moss on the ground, or a stone. Just find a comfortable seat. Just sit on the ground. And then you might like to just become aware of the earth beneath you. In shamanism and in Druidry, it's these basic things, so simple, like the earth and the sky and the trees, that bring us such nourishment, such inspiration, and such healing. And so open to the healing of the earth now. Allow gravity to do its magic. Just breathe in slowly and deeply. Hold for a moment. And then breathe out fully and deeply. And just allow yourself to feel the weight of your body just there on the earth. The earth is supporting you. You don't have to hold anything in or anything up. You can just let go. The earth will hold you. And it's as if in your consciousness you can travel into the earth. It's as if you can feel the energy of the earth, and it's almost perhaps as if you can see in 3D into the earth. And of course, in none of these exercises, you really have, some people don't see anything, and that's okay too, but you can imagine or sense or just know deep within, even if you're just feeling energies or awareness, that you're there in the earth, and there's all the creatures in the earth, all the life in the earth, and the moisture, the soil, the rocks, the minerals. You may even sense crystals too in the earth. And of course, the roots of the trees and all the roots connecting to each other. All a community of life beneath the surface of the earth. And you allow that energy just to flow up into your being. Just sense the energy flowing up. And as you sense it flowing up, you sense how the trees are drawing the moisture up their trunks too, just as you're drawing this invisible energy just up into your body. And just allow the flow of earth energy to flow up into your body, bringing with it stability and healing. And you become aware now of the trees around you, and you sense the trees, you sense their protection and their power. You sense their energy, these living beings, our brothers and sisters, full of peace and of power, of energy and strength. And you breathe in the perfume of these trees. Trees exude essential oils that are good for our bodies. Breathe in their essential oils. And as you breathe in, you gaze up at the sky above, and you see the branches and the leaves, and high above the sky. And you breathe in the energy of the sky now. The energy of the sky meets the energy of the earth within the center of your being. And just breathing in and breathing out. Just allowing yourself to be in this sacred grove. I will just say a Druid prayer to you that evokes the powers of certain plants that are sacred to the Druids and to the Ovates. And you can just allow the spirits of these plants, any that you need, to bring healing to you, to bring energy to you. Enchanter's plant, vervain, herb of grace, holy wort, chief herb, sacred to Venus and the Awen. May it bring inspiration, love, reconciliation, and blessings into my life. Guardian trees of elder, birch, and hawthorn, I hold your berries, elder and hawthorn. Tears of your sap, birch, and I ask for your blessings to drive away impurities and to strengthen my heart. Simple plantain, here with your leaves, way bread of the 9 herbs charm. Bring me the calm, the assertiveness, the resilience that I need. Yarrow, staunch grass of the diviner's charm. Bring me the stability of faith, the salve of faithfulness, the strength of virility, the healing of my wounds. Valerian, all heal and encourager of sleep, with your sweet scent, bring me calm, bring me deep peace. Fairy flowers of primrose, prima rosa, the first flower of hillside and garden, bring me love, bring me peace, bring me the blessings of Ceridwen's cauldron. Artemisia, mugwort, motherwort, sacred to Venus, help me to see beyond the world of effects to the world of causes and meaning, of beauty and power. May fatigue be banished, protection be always about me. Mistletoe, drawn from oak and apple, seed of rebirth and of new life, all heal of the ancients. May my own life be refreshed at its roots, reborn with every dawn. May all be healed. May all be blessed. And just allow the blessings of these plants to be with you. No need to think about it. No need to do anything, but just to allow these plants to do their magic. And to know that if your soul needs this and your body needs this, then they will do their magic without any effort on your part. And you just become aware now of being seated in the clearing in the forest. And just imagine that you're moving your hands down onto the earth and sense your palms on the earth. And feel your love for the earth. Feel your love flowing into the earth. And ask that this earth might be blessed. May the earth be blessed. May the land be blessed. And then move your hands up in your imagination. And now you might like to do this physically as well. Bring your palms up to your heart, to your chest. So you place both your palms over your chest. And you ask, may my life be blessed. May all lives be blessed. A blessing on all life, a blessing on the land. And as you feel the blessings flowing into you, you can feel the warmth from your palms flowing into your heart. And that warmth flows from your heart through your whole body. And as you start to become aware of your body and the warmth flowing through it, your awareness of the sacred grove begins to fade. You know that you can return to it at any time for inspiration, if you wish. But for now, your awareness of it begins to fade as your awareness of the body grows stronger and as you become aware of the four walls around you, the ceiling above you, the floor beneath you, the screen in front of you. And you feel fully present here and now in your physical body. Stretch your fingers and toes. And when you feel ready, and only when you feel ready, you gently open your eyes. Here we go. Susan is asking, do druids have an equivalent to the upper, middle, and lower worlds? Yeah, yes, indeed, Susan, and that's exactly what we were talking about. There aren't in Welsh. There are words for there's Anun for the underworld and Arbred for the upper world. I'm not sure in Irish actually. I need to find that out. But certainly in Welsh, there are words for the upper and lower worlds. But certainly the concept is there. And bards, ovates, and druids work in those three worlds, as I explained. Yeah. How Carl? I remember Carl. I recognize your name, Carl Schlotterbeck. Yes. How different is the current rendition of the Obod training from the one I went through in the 1990s? Yes, because of course the Obod training has been around for 35 years now. It's been through at least three revisions, so it'll be different. You would have gone through the early rendition of it, so it's really quite different actually. When I say different, I mean when I became chief, I was keen to honor my druid teachers heritage, as it were, and I reproduced a lot of his teaching materials. But then I came to realize that it was kind of out of date and old-fashioned in some ways, and I needed to update it really. So a major revision occurred towards the end of the 1990s. So you would find it very and then in the next century, the next millennium, we created an online version. Well, we created an audio version with the most wonderful storytelling and music. And of course, we had the opportunity then to have the meditations actually carried out in an audio way. And it was this lovely kind of opening to the idea of Druidry being originally an oral tradition. And here we were being able to disseminate an oral tradition again. And that was through CDs. And then a little later on, that became an online version, which had the added ability to have films in it as well. So those who enroll in the course can see films and have music. And, we had some lovely music. Lorena McKinnett donated a track and so on. So some wonderful stuff. So yes, really quite different, Carl, I think you'll find. And then now what we've had just in the last 6 months, we've created a wonderful thing called the Druid Half, where if you can imagine, if you go online and you have all the courses, the online training in one area, and then you study that with the films and the audios, and then you can click on a button and you can go into another area which has, I suppose, the equivalent of a Facebook sort of feed with the contacts that you make and the friends that you have, but with none of the awful features of Facebook like ads and data mining and so on. So it's a much more private sort of place. And then we have 100 special interest groups. I mean, quite extraordinary. We have a mental health practitioners special interest group with 420 people in it, for instance, with monthly Zoom meetings. We have groups on mythology and on cooking, all sorts of things. Absolutely incredible. So we have 100 special interest. We have 6 different magazines in different languages, and all their archives are available in there. And then we have live streaming. So we have workshops that are streamed live into this, all in the space called the Druid Hearth. If you look up on druidry.org and look for the Druid Hearth, you'll see there's a whole page that explains what it does. And if you like social media, then it's wonderful because it's contained within a kind of Druid ethos. If you don't like social media, you can just ignore that, but use all the other features. There's a whole bunch of other stuff as well, the online workshops and the magazines and so on. Then we've got Jason is asking, could you speak a bit more about, sorry, it's all changing. Could you speak a bit more about Druid practices accessing the creative flow state? Well, that's huge, Jason, and that's a lot of what the training is that I've just been talking about in response to Carl's question, which is that if one gets the idea that there is this creative flow state, and yes, there does seem to be some way that I can sort of attract more of this flow into my life. The question is then exactly this: well, how do you do it? And that, in a sense, is a whole part of the training. The meditations, the journeys, the exercises are all about how can I both clear myself and open myself so I'm like a vessel, like a clear pool for the flow to go through me, but also how can I enrich myself so that I can, because we know in creativity there's this interesting relationship between, on the one hand, being able to being an empty vessel, a clear reed, so that the inspiration can flow. But you also need to, for instance, if you're a writer, you need to have, a vocabulary. You need to know how to express yourself. You need to know the skills of writing. If you're an artist, you need to know how to draw and so on. So it's not all about just encouraging inspiration. It's this combination of developing skills and enriching one's mind and heart, as well as opening to the creative flow. And that's the whole sort of thrust, really, of Druid training. Tracy, you mentioned some other ways of thinking about the relationship between bards, ovates. Could you describe those, or how these three paths interweave and support each other if they do? Yes, yes. My talk was about another way of thinking about bards, ovates, and druids, from this sort of shamanic lens. Could you describe these? Well, I did, I think, to a degree. I could, all of these. The trouble is, all of these topics, one could talk about for ages, and I'm just aware of the time that we've only got 8 minutes. How these three paths interweave. Let's focus on that. How these three paths interweave and support each other, if they do. Yes, they certainly do. There's a very interesting, in a way, breaking them into three is unnatural, in as much as we are one being, and so we have this. When I talk about the needs of the singer, shaman, and sage in us, it's not like there are three different people inside us, although you could characterize it like that. But no, it's one person, but with these different needs. And so by spending some time focusing on the bard, working with ideas around narrative and the story of your life and the story of the earth, the story of the trees, the story of the plants, with myth and story as well, and with creativity. These are all ways of working within the bardic stream. They are kind of distinct things that you do, but they connect with then the next level, the ovate work, which is going deep into the symbolism and learning how to experience all of this, not just intellectually with the mind, but also with the subtle senses and the heart. And then in the Druid grade, how can this all result in a kind of maturing of the soul? So all the time, that's why Celtic knotwork is so lovely, and the symbol for the Druid grade is a triple knot, so that all these three paths weave together, and that's why it's expressed as a triple knot. But thank you for these questions. They're very rich, and I could talk forever about them. Deborah, do you know if Awen and the other worlds are really tapping into the same place, i.e. energy? Well, the idea of let's think about Awen. Quite a nice way of thinking about Awen is as an elixir. This idea that there's this elixir that's flowing from the goddess, if you like, that we taste. And so in the two primal stories from Ireland and Wales, the story of Taliesin, where 3 drops from the goddess's cauldron fall onto the tongue of the young boy Gwion Bach, and he sucks his thumb and becomes illumined. And then the same story, but in a completely different clothing, but essentially the same, because it's about a young boy, Finn McCool, and he pops a little blister on a salmon that's cooking, and 3 drops of salmon liquor spill out, again hot, scald his thumb, he sucks his thumb, and he's illumined. So it's essentially the same story. And this is the whole idea of Awen and Imas in Ireland. But there's another kind of energy or elixir that is talked about in Druidry, which is nuifre, which comes from this idea of an ancient Proto-Celtic word for the firmament, this kind of star energy that flows through us, that is like life force, that is chi, if you like. And then we can ask, well, okay, so you've presented 2 elixirs, 2 flows of energy, inspiration and life. Are they essentially the same thing? Well, I suppose if you adopt the view that in the end there's one source, the divine, and that from that one source everything is refracted like rays of light through a prism, then indeed they all come from the same place. And the question you're asking, Deborah, is yes, at heart we're talking about one thing, but we live in the world of the many, and so we're also looking at the differentiation of the one in these various different into these various different streams. So that's a lovely series of questions, and what it reminds me of is there's a idea in the Bardic tradition that the Grail, when you have, the Grail feeds everyone. In the Grail stories, the Grail appears as this miraculous chalice, and it appears before every knight, and it gives him whatever he desires, which if you look at it from a sort of mundane point of view, it gives rise to the Monty Python an idea of the sort of absurdity of it, that one person gets chips and somebody else gets a hamburger and all the rest of it. So it's a silly way of looking at it, but the spiritual way of understanding it, the symbolic way of understanding it, is that one is fed and nourished in the depths of one's being, and we all have on the one hand different needs, but also in the way the question that Deborah was asking, actually, also at heart the same. And there's this idea in the Bardic tradition, is that when you kind of get it, when you get the Awen, when you can enter into the flow and the stream, it is endless. It's not like you exhaust the the pool of stories, you exhaust the pool of inspiration. It's an incredibly liberating idea, because one of the problems most of us have as modern people is we think that we have a finite, whether consciously or not, we think we have a finite amount of creativity. So people will say, before I die, I just want to be able to express myself fully. I just want to be able to, give everything that I have to the world, And the Druid's answer to that is, well, don't even try. You can't, because your creativity is endless. It's not like there's a limited supply and you haven't quite got access to this limited supply, and then if you can just break into it, you can create this wonderful oeuvre and give it to the world, and that's it, you've done it. It's actually endless. It's a flow. And this, when we get this understanding, it's incredibly freeing, because you realize that that it is endless. The flow of creativity is endless. And you just have to kind of open up and relax into it and tune into it, and the supply will be there. So thank you very much. Well, that's very kind of you, Sarah, for saying that, and Karen and so on. Yeah, lovely. So I think probably we're coming to time now, and thank you very much for inviting me to make this presentation. I really enjoyed being with everyone and sharing these ideas with you. And I love the fact that somehow we're all in the same space together in these times. We're sharing this field together.
Well, thank you so much, Philip. We truly all very much enjoyed your story and sharing your deep wisdom with us. Just a whole nother piece of the huge puzzle of shamanism and spirituality that I was personally loved hearing what you had to say, and I know that the attendees did too. Thank you so much for joining us today.